Interested in media coverage with over 80,000 podcast playbacks per month, along with automated outreach to thousands of customized targets to grow your revenue more efficiently? With over $8 billion in new sales pipeline growth delivered to our partners so far, we can help. Please reach out for more information. Welcome, everybody, to FEI Freight Executive Insights. I'm Michael Vincent. He is not. He's Tyson S. Lawrence. And if you didn't notice, he's like 75 years old and he just won a boxing match the other night. No, that was the other guy. That was the other guy.
That was the other guy. He's been shadowing me for a while, let me tell you.
He is. I mean, you know, the thing is, I used to get you guys confused all the time. And then he got that tattoo on his face. So now I can tell you guys apart.
You bet. Well, you know, it's funny, for a while there, you know, I get introduced to people and they'd immediately cover their ear, you know, and the first couple of years it was funny, you know, and then it drug on for about 10 or 15 years. And it was like, hey, this guy's got to do something else so he can get me out of this hole.
Yeah. Well, the only reason I brought it up is because I didn't watch the fight, but I watched the highlights and stuff like that after the fight. And he absolutely just smoked the dude. I mean, he just beat the living crap out of him. I mean, he's a 60-year-old pit bull. Here's the thing. It doesn't matter how old he is. I'm not fighting Mike Tyson.
You bet.
He's insane. He's nuts. You can't,
oh my gosh.
You can't fight. You know, you get that stupid drunk muscle.
Right.
At the risk of him coming to beat me up, I'm going to say that's him, man.
It is.
He's either killing you.
There was a Netflix story around it, and it was, you know, they were showing him just being Mike, you know, just running around, and he got the title for being the baddest man on the planet for a reason, and a lot of it is what he has to say. You know, the guy has a way of words for just cutting through and scaring the shit out of you. And he did it multiple times in that documentary prior to the fight, and it was just like, this guy's special. That's why he's who he is.
And he grew up that way, and he explained it. I mean, that's how he had to be to survive. I mean, his voice and his size growing up, he had to be the baddest ass, otherwise he was going to get killed. I mean,
right. And I think, to transition that into, you know, kind of how you work, you got to kind of have that mentality of like, you're going to take the bull by the horns, and you're not going to be the victim, you know, and you're going to kind of make things happen for yourself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people who want to do that, they want to contact you anyways, right? I mean, CEO of so we forgot to even introduce you, man. He doesn't box. He plays football for 5 different teams back there. Well, wait a minute. 2 of them are the same helmet.
Yeah. I'm just a football nut.
Nut.
I grew up playing it. And then, you know, like most have to kind of say goodbye to it. And then, you know, I kind of just transitioned that perspective into the business world. And that's
see, here's the thing. I played it too for 14 years. And those of us who survived, you know, the brain concussions and stuff like that, right. we were at least functional enough to get into logistics, right? I mean,
you bet.
That was that was it.
And that's like people, you know, I played hockey as well. So I was an aggressive young man, and I tell people even now, it's like, if you have to tell me twice, you know, I took a lot of shots to the head when I was younger, you know? So
that's my excuse too. There was lead paint was around when I was a kid too.
You must be a Gen Xer.
I am. Oh yeah. I'm just out of baby boomers, actually.
Well, I'm just inside the Gen X. I almost fell into the millennial. They call me like a zillennial or whatever that is. But
with an X, 78
zillennial. Yeah.
That's crazy. Awesome. But in case you didn't know it, you're CEO of Diablo Freight Ventures, which I love. Every time I read that or see that, I think of the Jerry Seinfeld when, you know, he's rooting for the Devils, when Putty's rooting for it. He goes, Priest is in there going, El Diablo, El Diablo.
That's a great one. That's one of my favorites. Because we've all seen those guys at the hockey game.
Oh yeah. Your face is painted. Yeah, got to support the team, man. Got to support the team.
Good stuff.
So tell us, I mean, for those who don't know who the heck, I mean, I know who El Diablo is, but Diablo Freight Ventures, is it true that people can come to you, you'll double X their revenue and then sell them for massive profits? Is that your deal?
Well, that's the plan, you know, and I think if you want to do that, you got to have a plan, right? You know,
and you do.
That's kind of one of the things that I started early on in my business is I didn't think about the end. You know, I was so caught up in the beginning and the middle and just slugging along and beat my head against the wall that I didn't set up my companies to be acquired or for an exit or any of that stuff early on. So I had to do a lot of backfilling, and things like that to make it a better company. And so I like to talk, at Diablo Freight Ventures, it's kind of a culmination of my career. I created it in 2022, so we're only about a year and a half old. But basically, it encompasses some investments that I've made in the space, in the logistics space, some different companies, not necessarily technology per se, but just kind of interesting things across the board. And then I own a Unishippers franchise, which basically I tasked myself with acquiring and then inserting somebody who I can coach to build and grow that. I'm involved, but mainly I'm coaching that person to run that franchise and to build that franchise. Yeah. And it's allowed me then to kind of take that and work out in the market as a coach and a kind of a consultant for others who want to do that. And hopefully they can learn from some of my mistakes I've made along the way and then, turn them into successes.
Gotcha. So let me ask you, if you're going to double, my revenues, and why would I sell my business?
Well, that's a tough question. That's it.
I mean, you run into guys who are like, yeah, hey man, come on in here. And then you get it rocking and rolling. They're like, well, you know what? I think I'll keep this thing here.
Yeah. Well, and that's that kind of bore out. I thought the same way, right? And kind of my story is my first company I started in 2006 didn't have a lot of technology out there, a lot of people in the market. And I'm in California, which, this isn't necessarily the, freight broker central like Chicago is and, maybe out in Chattanooga. So I was kind of in a silo, working in a silo. Yeah. And so I threw a lot of shit against the wall to see what would stick. And, I had a lot of success in the beginning, kind of, didn't have a lot of failure, but then I got to a certain point where I kind of leveled off. And then when I leveled off at about $10 million in revenue, I couldn't figure out how to take that next step. And then I got, like in anything, the minute you become stagnant, you start to kind of regress, or once you stop growing, you get yourself in trouble. And that was exactly what happened with my situation. We had some different internal things. We just weren't a strongly built company, right? It was kind of put together haphazardly, so to speak. I hate to use that word, but just not real strategic. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
So when that went, eventually it went bankrupt. I had a bad deal with a customer of mine, and it was in contract rates that kind of bit me in the ass, and we got into a contract dispute. And then I decided that as we were going down, I was either going to have to go work for somebody again or take another bite at the apple. And I was able to kind of pivot a bit and decide that instead of working with large enterprise shippers, I was going to work with smaller companies and be more of a coach, a consultant. And that's where we really found our traction. And I grew that business to about 25 million and then sold it to Global Trans in 2021. And I have to tell you,
you went on board with them though, didn't you? Right?
Yeah. Then I went on board with Global Trans for a couple of years, kind of got to see behind the scenes a little bit of what it looks like, having agents, how other people were running their businesses, how other agents were. So that really opened my eyes to being like, oh, okay. And then I had a lot of people coming and asking me different questions, how did you do this? How did you do that? And so I really got into that. It just tapped into my coaching, gene, or my, just kind of, I have a little bit of that in my DNA. But what was, to get back to, I did like a little Trump weave here. So I'm going to come back and tell you the reason why, I sold the business was I was exhausted. I had done about 10 years and then another 5. So about 15 years of founding a company, going down, rebuilding one. And I just wanted to, take my chips off the table and try to do something else. And it took me about a year to recover from that, to where I felt like I was ready to start another, freight brokerage or whatever and get back in the game. But a lot of it's just come back around now to coaching and trying to help others set their businesses up to be successful, to do whatever they want to do, pass it down a generation or exit it. But you got to have those things in mind ahead of time if you want to be successful.
Yeah, like you said before, you didn't build yours strategically with that in mind, and that's what you need to do. Whether you're going to sell it or hand it down generationally, right? You got to build the same systems and same structure, right?
You bet. Yeah,
Because
you
it's
got to
essentially the same thing.
Yep, you got to put processes in play. You got to be organized. You got to be, be able to just really have ways of turning it over or transferring your knowledge to other people, so you can step back and it can run on its own, and you're not,
Yeah.
necessary.
But yeah, there's certain things that need to be in place to make it attractive for an investor too, right? I mean,
Right.
I had some friends in a rather large brokerage that was going had a bunch of agents, and the
Mhm.
issue that they did is over 5-6 years of getting all these agents, they did all these little sweetheart deals, and
Yeah.
so they spent the better part of 3 years cleaning up all those contracts
Right.
because there
You
wasn't anybody
bet.
going to buy them out with 150 different contracts. That's crazy to
Yeah.
manage, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you would be surprised that that even happens on the higher levels of companies. That was one of the interesting things that I saw when I was with Global Trans. Was what was the timing was really weird, was that we closed on the sale to Global Trans on a Tuesday. And then Thursday night, I got a call from Bob Farrell, the CEO at the time, and he said, "Hey, Tyson, I couldn't really disclose this during our negotiations, but I wanted to give you a heads up that tomorrow we're announcing that we're going to be merging with Worldwide Express." And I
Oh
was
wow.
like, "Oh shit, okay." Well, at the time, I was like, "I don't give a fuck," I was like, I'd sold
Yeah.
my business, but I was going to be around for another 2 years contractually. So once that kind of started to set in, I thought, wow, this is going to be really interesting, kind of place to be, to watch two $4 billion companies try to come together.
Yeah, done a great. I'd have paid for that seat.
Right. And so it was interesting, and I got to see a lot of how companies on that level try to merge, and you know they're not always in line and perfect, like ready to sell and things like that. So when you have more control at a smaller level, it's better to start putting some things in place to make that, having the foresight to say, if and when I do get there, this is going to be an easier deal for everybody to make us more attractive. Because everybody
Yeah.
wants the easier deal. So,
Ex-
yeah, it just kind of leveled the playing field for me, and was like, look, it's just about perspective. It's not, a $100 million sale probably has the same issues that a $4 billion sale has. It's just on a different, level.
well, yeah, and it's interesting because when you talk about like two $4 billion companies coming together, and I hear what you're saying is you think because it's a $4 billion company or something that they got their shit together, and that's not
Right.
necessarily the case. And
You
they
bet.
may have it in certain areas, but other certain areas it just aren't. Every large company has it's just like any business, right? You got the
Yeah.
80-20, you got the 20-60-20 rule. You got
Yeah.
20, and that happens within departments, et cetera. But as you're growing, right? So you're looking at these companies and you're coaching them. You got to set yourself up, to
Right.
move forward. How do they balance? And this is a good time, I think, to kind of discuss this or whatever, get your insights. How do they balance staying that nimble, flexible small business, right, where they can cut these deals,
Mhm.
and move that ship quickly because they're a PT boat, they're not an aircraft carrier.
Right.
You know what I mean? As they're growing, but also try and be that aircraft carrier because it runs like a top, and that's easily sucked up. How do they balance between kind of those two things, that entrepreneurial spirit and that want and that growth, hyper growth phase, but also doing it in a way that is structurally sound for that future goal?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, it's very, it's intentional. You got to be intentional about that, and being efficient in how you go about, either acquiring different companies or acquiring different technologies to plug into your system. What are you going to get out of it? Is it worth it, or is it going to make you more? Um, is it going to bog you down? Are you going to lose money? So in order to do that, what I've done is I've been able to surround myself. I'm a big delegator. I'm a team player. I've always played team sports growing up, as we talked. And so I kind of view myself as a general manager, really. I try to get the best players to play the best at their positions. And when you kind of bring that all together, there's a natural ability to kind of balance out, things. The tech guy doesn't get out of whack because the operational guy doesn't see what the use of it is. And then
Yeah.
ultimately, probably the CEO's got to make a decision based on that. But ultimately, if you have those voices in the room and you have those conversations, like communicate and team build and all that type of stuff, I believe that's where you find the balance. But it's an imperfect science, but it is something where you do want to keep pushing forward, keep innovating, keep staying on the edge of technology and or hiring and recruiting and selling and all that type of stuff. And but you want to make things familiar enough that where people can come in and rinse and repeat day in and day out and don't feel like they're always having to learn something new. It's a real tricky balancing act by all means.
Yeah, it definitely is, because you can be distracted really quickly. And when you're in those, you can, I mean, you could have 5 things in front of you and every one of them would be successful. But by doing all 5 of them, you destroy all 5 of them. You got to pick 1 or 2 and just do them, right?
You're right. And that's a very good point, Mike. It's, as a CEO and sometimes an entrepreneur, you get really, a CEO should be good at everything, but probably not a master of any. He should probably.
He needs to hire those masters, but be good enough to understand what the masters are doing, right?
You bet, and be humble enough to be able to be like, okay, this is my CMO, and he or she is the best that I could find at that time. So whatever they recommend, they're clearly in my radar because I hired them. What are they really saying, and how do we implement that, and all that type of stuff. So. Yeah, it's I don't know. You've got to kind of always stay looking at yourself and being very self-aware of where you are as a company and what you're doing.
Yeah, constant assessment. Here's my target. Write down that target. Write down that goal. Write down that structure, and you got to keep checking every once in a while. It's like we talked about before. I've talked about this many times in trucking. Right? Did you play for Washington State?
No, but I went to school there. I played hockey there.
Oh, okay. So, all right. So, it doesn't matter where'd you play football. You don't go to one practice, at the beginning of August, and then you're good to go.
Yeah.
You practice every day.
You bet.
And for 3 weeks in the summer, 3 times a day. Yeah. And then and that was for 6 days. And on the 7th day, you only practiced twice, but then you spent 4 hours looking at film.
You bet.
And then when the season hit, you got to play on Saturday, and then you watched film all day Sunday, went to the weight room and did all that kind of stuff. And then you practiced Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I mean, you don't stop.
Yeah.
Right? So as a business leader, you don't start a company and, I'm CEO now. I'm good
now. No, you're always preparing, right? You're always looking at and I love the analogy, because that's essentially kind of, the way I look at it.
Tom Brady practiced every day.
And Tom Brady had a coach.
That's right.
On top of that, and that's the other thing.
Even Tiger Woods had a swing coach.
You bet. Yeah. And that's another thing that, I try to point out to CEOs and executives that, it's okay to have a coach. Like, I lean into coaches, I lean into mentors, and that's a lot of where my success has come from, is the ability to be coachable and to realize I don't have all the answers. And no matter what I've done or what I'm going to do, I've got to be able to take in other voices and things like that. So, it's important that you have a game plan, obviously, but then you got to prepare for it, right? And preparing for it and getting yourself ready to take advantage of that opportunity when that opportunity arises. And that's kind of what I've tried to do my whole career, is just be ready. And when I see an opportunity, I'm there, I'm ready for it. But that's a lot of preparation, and that's a lot of work of trying to, learn, fail, succeed, fail again, and just keep learning how to do a little bit better than the time before.
Yeah. So you've been doing this a year and a half, and what a year and a half it's been, bro.
Yeah, it's been wild. I jumped back in the game full feet. My wife wasn't real happy because she thought, all right, we're going to have some, quiet. She liked the fact I was working for somebody and getting a paycheck, because, that's how the entrepreneurs roll. We're always the last to get paid, right? And
so of course.
I tell her she deserves a medal one day, but, more importantly, she should probably write a book about what it's like to be married to an entrepreneur, because, it's just been up and down. And then once we had a little bit of, I was working for somebody. First time I was drawing a paycheck from somebody in 20 years. And having some stability, I came home one day and I said, hey, I think it's come back. Like the fire's back. And she's like, no, what are you doing? And I was like, no, I promise I know what to do this time. So,
How about if you just go buy a motorcycle? Just buy a motorcycle and forget about it.
I'm about there.
I mean, you picked like the absolute perfect time, May 2023. It's like, hey, I think I'll get back into the transportation industry.
Well, yeah, and that was kind of what was interesting about it too. Was I don't know. I mean, I tend to do things the hard way anyway, so I didn't really know any different, And I was confident that everything was going to come back, but I also thought there was an opportunity to get out there and try to help people with some of my knowledge that I've acquired, and that was a little different for me. I won't lie, there was a lot of imposter syndrome, after the sale for a while. I tell everybody that wants to sell their business, it's all part of my coaching, is to get a nice therapist, for when it goes down.
Yeah,
it's a real mind fuck, where you kind of go where everybody needs you to now nobody needs you, and you're kind of wrestling with yourself.
And then when you start wrestling, you start thinking, why did anybody need me before? Why would they need me? I don't have anything to offer. What the heck is it? Yeah, that's difficult.
Right.
Imposter syndrome.
And then you're kind of like,
sucks.
I pulled this over on them, or whatever. But anyway, it just, so I worked through that, and kind of started to realize that when I was talking to people, that things in my brain that were just mundane facts or, useless knowledge were important to someone else's journey and what they were doing. And so once I kind of had that connection, I was like, okay, I get it.
And that's what it is. Supposed to be. That's where it is. Like when I'm speaking to somebody and they're like, how you got so much? I said, dude, I've been in this business since '88.
Wow. Yeah. Even before me. Wow.
I've done all this stuff. I've been in ocean shipping. I've been in air freight. I've been in final mile. I've been in LTL truck. I've been in all that SaaS, all that stuff. I've been through all of this. You're not going to tell me something that I'm going to go, oh, no kidding.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Right. Well, and that's important too. And, that I think getting, a little bit of knowledge everywhere in this industry is helpful,
Well, 10 years of the same thing is, I mean, well, there's different levels of it, right? Like 10 years of somebody doing some specific jobs is just 10 years of the same thing over and over. It's hard to get 10 years of the same thing over and over in this business because there's a new shit goes down every day.
Right.
I mean, you could just be, a claims clerk at a company and do that for 10 years and you've pretty much seen everything. No, you haven't, because the next day it's something different is everybody figures out a new way to screw something up every day. I swear.
You bet. You bet. Yeah, that's a very good point. And that's kind of why I like the business, right? I landed in it, like most people, just by accident, blind accident. And it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. But, I graduated from Washington State in 2000, so like 99, 2000. It was the kind of the end of the dot-com boom was going off about that time. Yeah. And I'm originally from Washington State. And so everybody was going to Seattle and getting these, sales jobs for all the tech companies and stuff. And
putting their gum on the wall.
You bet. Yeah. And I love Seattle. It's beautiful in September and August and stuff like that. But I didn't want to go there. And so I was kind of open to go anywhere. And that's where C.H. Robinson reached out to me. And I had no clue who C.H. Robinson was or what they did. And all they said was, hey, our only spot is down in San Francisco, and our office down in Oakland. And I said, sign me up. I mean, I was 21 years old, single, had unencumbered with a college degree. And I was like, let's go roll. But I get in there and I realized holy shit, what is it? I moved all down here and all that stuff. And I vividly remember, I can to this day, walking in, opening those doors to the office and being like, what am I doing again? This better work out. I don't really comprehend what this job is.
Yeah. Not quite sure what I'm doing.
Yeah. And the more I talk to other people in the business, they've come from other things and they found their way into the business and they've been able to grow and find different things. And so that's another thing I like to do. I like to introduce people to it, whether it's through my companies or placing them, elsewhere, because it keeps your mind going. There's always something new and fresh and kind of just popping up that you got to keep, learning.
So what? Where? So you? I mean, you're coaching and you're helping people build up their business and getting it ready to sale or hand down or whatnot. What's going on? What are you seeing going on right now? Is that still? Is there more desperation in the air right now, or is there? Uh, Man, we made it through some tough times and we're gonna get there. I mean, attitudes have changed in literally the last 7 days,
You bet.
right? I mean, they did.
Yep.
Um, what do you see on that front? Are more people like now starting to say, you know what, I think we're going to hang on and get this going, or is there still fire sales out there, or
Yeah.
what's your take?
I think it's definitely the light at the end of the tunnel. Nothing. This business doesn't turn on. I mean, I guess it does turn on a dime sometimes, but it's been an interesting couple of years, just watching all the disruption that's happened. But I knew we eventually get back to where we were. Everything was quote
It's a
unquote.
cycle. It happens.
Yeah,
It's a cycle. I was talking to Ken Adamo yesterday morning for quite a while. We're
yeah.
just going through the cycles. I mean,
You're right.
we're in a cycle. I mean, you
Yeah, and it
always
was
are.
going to come back. It was just a matter of when. I don't know if you know. It's refreshing. Let me just put it that way. It's a little bit refreshing. I'm an optimistic guy, so it was hard to continually stay optimistic when the general tenor was negative. But what I find really interesting right now about the industry is that it's really swinging towards the big guys, and not necessarily like C.H. Robinson, Landstar, things like that, or TQL. I'm talking like the businesses that are building out agencies and
Yeah.
big W-2s, things like that, because so much is needed now to support a customer in the logistics business that the small mom and pop brokerages doing 10 to 15 million dollars really have you know they're going to have a decision to make. And that decision, if they want to grow and keep going, and like we talked about before, if you're not growing, you're going backwards. You're going to either have to inject a whole lot of capital to be able to compete, on that level, or you're going to have to find a good home. And that doesn't mean selling your business. Maybe that's finding, an agency that you become an agent now instead of, an
Mm,
independent
mm,
MC,
mm,
because then you
yeah.
can leverage a lot of what they have for you and provide, freight fraud, all this stuff. Shippers are less likely to do business with smaller brokerages now, largely due to freight fraud. And that's a tough thing to overcome.
Right. But they're more likely to do business with smaller carriers through a reputable large
You bet.
3PL than they used to, right? I mean, that's one
Yep.
of
Oh,
the,
yeah.
in my mind, that's one of the reasons why the capacity, the changing capacity of this cycle was a lot different than the last cycle. Those smaller trucking companies and the 3PLs weren't dumped into grease quite as quickly as they used to be
You bet.
because of all these new technologies, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember back in the days, like especially when I first got started in the early 2000s, like we never referred to ourselves as a broker. Broker was a
Yeah.
bad word,
Yeah.
right?
No. You're an intermediary, bro.
Yeah, yeah, 3PL and not
3PL.
intermediary and freight management or whatever. But it was never broker. And then that kind of changed over time. But I think that's changed with we would be brokers would be third, fourth, and fifth in the routing guide.
Yeah.
Even
Of course.
C.H.
Yeah.
Robinson, they were behind the assets. And as that model's kind of shifted, there's less large fleet companies. I think it's harder to run a large fleet company than there's ever been before,
Yeah.
or fleet carrier. But then there's a lot of smaller mom and pops that can do it, right? So the middle part, like in even our economy, the middle group is getting kind of squeezed out, and they've got to go one way or the other.
Mm,
And
mm,
it's
mm.
kind of happening on the freight broker side too. It's kind of like you got to go one way or the other. You can't really stay small and boutiquey like you were before and be different than C.H. Robinson. It's because now these shippers have understood the power of a 3PL, and sometimes the bigger and the more modes they handle, the better it is for their business. And so
Mm.
they're ready to turn it over, to some of these bigger companies. And that's just definitely changed.
Yes. Dude, half hour. Poof. Gone. It
Love it.
goes by so fast, brother. It's
You
great
bet.
catching up with you. I'm so glad you came on. What's next for you, brother?
Just continue to stay in the game and try to coach and help out as much as possible. People can reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's probably the most active I am on anything now these days. Or you can go to my website, diablofreight.com. Send your information to me, shoot me an email. I love to talk. I love to chat. I love to chop it up with founders and entrepreneurs and, small business, medium-sized business owners, and try to strategize, ways to moving forward.
Fantastic.
It's
Right
a
on,
great time.
brother. I appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much for coming on. Everybody, thank you for tuning in and logging in and downloading and whatever you did to get us on the air. I mean, that's your fault, but thank you anyways. We'll see you next time on FEI. Peace and love.